Not all fuel system faults will be electrical. Understanding how to diagnose mechanical fuel system faults will make you an efficient and sought-after technician. On this vehicle, the customer has complained about hard starting when the vehicle is hot. If the customer tries to restart the vehicle after sitting for 10 minutes or so, it has an extended cranking time. The customer also states that if the accelerator pedal is pressed, the vehicle starts easier. We need to verify the customer's complaint before proceeding. I'll perform a road test and then park the vehicle for the concerned time. Okay, it's been about 10 minutes. We'll try to start the vehicle. So, the engine eventually fired, just as the customer explained. If I use the accelerator pedal, the engine does start easier. There are no fault codes stored, but I can't rule out the electrical system yet. Although, it does give me a reason to check the mechanical side of the fuel system as well. Using the oscilloscope, I can see there is correct firing voltage on all cylinders. So, we've confirmed there's no problem here. Let's move on to the fuel system and connect a fuel pressure and flow gauge. It is possible to connect the gauge direct to the fuel rail, although in this instance, I've connected it in series as I want to check the flow rate as well. The reason for testing the flow rate is to ensure there is an adequate volume of fuel reaching the rail. This guarantees a stable fuel pressure. With the fuel pump relay bridged, the fuel pressure has risen fairly quickly with good flow. I'll bleed off the gauge and test again while cranking the engine. If there was any change in pump performance here, it would indicate a possible electrical fault. As there was no difference in these checks, I can conclude that fuel flow and pressure are not the problem. Just because these checks are okay, it does not eliminate all fuel system components. Let's restart the vehicle while monitoring the gauge. The fuel pressure and flow are normal with the engine running. I've confirmed this using the manufacturer's specifications. Another symptom I noticed during diagnosis is when the engine fired and ran, it ran rough and there was a strong fuel smell from the exhaust. These symptoms may indicate an injector leak. This would account for the hard starting and rich fuel odour. To test this theory, we will prime the fuel system to full pressure. The fuel pressure is dropping. This could indicate a fault in the fuel pump check valve, fuel pressure regulator fault, or an external fuel pipe leak. Or, as I suspect, a leaking injector. To confirm this, I'll eliminate the check valve. Using a soft clamp, pinch the supply line from the fuel pump. Make sure the clamp is applied before the pressure gauge. Monitor the gauge for any change. If the fault is in the check valve, the pressure should not drop. As you can see, the pressure is still falling. Inspect for any external leaks after the soft clamp. As there are no leaks, this confirms my suspicions of a leaking injector or injectors. On a fuel return system, there are other possible causes for a pressure drop. To check if the regulator is the cause of the pressure loss, connect the fuel pressure gauge to the delivery side of the fuel rail. Prime the system and, using soft clamps, pinch the fuel line on the rail side of the gauge. Switch the ignition off. If the gauge pressure remains stable, then there is no pressure loss from the fuel pump check valve. Move the soft clamps to the fuel return line after the pressure regulator. Pinch here. Reprime the system and monitor the gauge. If the fuel pressure drops, this may indicate a leaking injector or a leaking fuel pressure regulator diaphragm. To isolate the fuel pressure regulator diaphragm as defective, remove the vacuum control hose and apply vacuum with a hand pump. Be sure to use a clear, looped hose. If any fuel can be seen in the hose, the pressure loss is occurring through the diaphragm. Normally, Any leaks here would be accompanied with a customer complaint of high fuel consumption, poor idle quality, and hard starting. Remove the fuel line clamp. If a pressure loss is now observed, the fuel is most likely leaking past the regulator valve. If there was no fuel leaking through the pressure regulator diaphragm or past the regulator valve, but the rail pressure continued to fall, the only possible fault is a leaking injector or injectors. It's best practice to clean or replace injectors as a set, perform a fuel quality check, and replace the fuel filter. This will help minimise any reoccurrence of the fault. Again, try to perform 2 separate tests to confirm a diagnosis on a fuel system. In a modern vehicle, it's very easy to blame faults on the electrical system. Don't forget the basics when mechanical components are involved. Thanks for watching.